On March 5, 2025, a US Mk-9 Reaper drone ascended from its base in Djibouti, embarking on what was planned as a routine reconnaissance patrol over the Red Sea. That routine was about to shatter just hours into its 27-hour mission. While operating in international airspace, the Houthis opened fire, launching multiple missiles at the unmanned aircraft. Despite the drone's defensive countermeasures, including the deployment of numerous flares, one of the incoming missiles found its mark. The $30 million Reaper plummeted into the depths below. This wasn't an isolated incident. The destruction of this drone marked the 12th such loss inflicted by the Houthis since 2023. It followed closely on the heels of a brazen attempt just weeks prior to down a manned F-16 fighter jet, an event we covered in detail previously. These aerial provocations, coupled with a staggering 174 attacks on US Navy vessels and 145 assaults on commercial shipping since 2023, painted a stark picture. The existing US strategy was failing. A decision was made, a strategic shift with the explicit aim of dismantling the Houthi threat once and for all. The operation commenced with devastating force at 1:30 local time. On Saturday, March 15th at 1 a.m. local time, US Navy sailors aboard the destroyers operating in the Red Sea received the order they had anticipated throughout the preceding week: fire. Within a mere 10 minutes, the Tomahawk teams had finalized their launch protocols, charting the initial waypoints for their missiles. From this point forward, the classified mission library would guide the Tomahawks towards their designated targets. Although the sailors were not privy to the specific targets, they erupted in cheers as the first volleys of missiles were launched from their vertical launch systems at 0115 local, accelerating to a speed of 515 miles per hour. The flight time to their targets within Sana'a was estimated at approximately 15 minutes. However, the launch sequence was carefully orchestrated to introduce an element of surprise. The slight variations in launch times, combined with the differing positions of the launching vessels, allowed the crews to program a coordinated, simultaneous strike. The Tomahawks were designed to loiter. Missiles arriving early would circle overhead, awaiting the arrival of the remaining missiles, ensuring a synchronized time-on-top attack. This plan was executed flawlessly. At precisely 1:30 a.m., multiple Tomahawk missiles slammed into Sana'a International Airport, a key hub for the Houthis' storage and deployment of Shahed attack drones. Simultaneously, a military barracks located within a residential area in downtown Sana'a was obliterated. In the Sana'a suburb of Mo, multiple Tomahawks struck 4 Houthi command posts located in the Gif neighborhood. With the Houthis' command structure severely crippled, the US launched a second wave of attacks just 45 minutes later. As the Tomahawks were being launched from the destroyers, F-18 strike fighters from the USS Harry S. Truman began their sorties. Their mission: to neutralize the power station in Dion, along with 11 additional targets throughout Sana'a Governorate. The F-18s were armed with AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapons JSOWs. These missiles, boasting a range of 130 kilometers, carried a 500-pound warhead. However, these were no ordinary JSOWs. Given that many of the 11 targets in Sana'a Governorate were hardened underground weapon storage facilities, the JSOWs were equipped with specialized BLU-111 penetrating nose plugs. These modifications enabled the bombs to burrow through up to 20 feet of reinforced concrete or 100 feet of earth before detonating. As the F-18s approached Sana'a Governorate, their primary target was the power station. This facility served as the principal supplier of electricity to substations across Houthi-controlled territories. Neutralizing this power station would plunge the region into darkness, and that is precisely what occurred. Across Yemen, soldiers and civilians alike experienced a sudden blackout as the F-18s continued to bombard targets throughout Sana'a. With the Houthis effectively blinded, unable to communicate or coordinate, it was time for the next phase of the operation to commence. Hours before the F-18s roared into action and the Tomahawks launched from the destroyers, 2 B-1 bombers forward deployed to a Turkish Air Force base took off just before midnight. These bombers, operating as part of Task Force 242, represented a crucial element of the AIR Force's forward deployed strike capabilities. With a distance of approximately 1,700 miles to cover at a cruising speed of 647 miles per hour, it would take the B-1s just under 3 hours to reach their target area. area, timed perfectly to coincide with the F-18's power grid strike. Unable to detect the approaching bombers due to the disabled air search radars, the B-1s unleashed a full salvo of 24 AGM-158 Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missiles JASSMs each. Critically, the B-1s were able to launch these devastating strikes without entering the range of Houthi air defenses. The maximum range of the Houthis' most advanced missile sites was approximately 120 kilometers. However, the extended range JASSM variants carried by the B-1s, powered by their Williams turbofan engines, could travel over 1,000 kilometers. Furthermore, the AIR Force had opted for the advanced JASSM variants. These missiles possess the same loitering capability as the Tomahawk, allowing them to coordinate their strikes for maximum impact. The result was devastating. Precisely at 3 a.m. local time, salvos of JASSMs rained down on Houthi UAV facilities throughout Alba Governorate. In total, the B-1s eliminated at least 8 such facilities, effectively wiping out the Houthis' cache of Shade drones. Not to be outdone by their bomber counterparts, several AIR Force F-15 Strike Eagles took off from bases in Qatar and the UAE. With a maximum speed of Mach 2.5, these jets departed their bases as the B-1s turned for home. Fully loaded with 2,000-pound Joint Direct Attack Munitions, JDAMs, these warbirds pummeled 2 apartment buildings in IB Governorate. Crucially, these buildings were unoccupied by civilians. The Houthis had forcibly evicted the residents and converted the buildings into weapons storage sites, operating under the mistaken belief that the US would not target civilian infrastructure. With impeccable timing, the F-15s lit up the night sky at precisely 4:20. The operation was far from over. After returning to the Truman to rearm and refuel, the F-18s took off again, this time accompanied by new support. At first glance, the EA-18 Growler looks like a standard F-18. However, this aircraft's primary mission is electronic warfare, specifically the suppression of enemy air defenses. While it typically achieves this through jamming pods, on this morning it would employ a less frequently used weapon, the AGM-88 High-Speed Anti-Radiation Missile, HARM. The HARM missile's seeker is unique. Unlike missiles that rely on infrared or active radar, the HARM scans for electromagnetic radar emissions, capable of detecting targets in the 0.5 to 20 gigahertz frequency range. This is more than sufficient to lock onto Houthi air search radars operating in the 4 to 8 gigahertz bands. With Houthi gunners desperately scanning the skies for an incoming attack, they were effectively broadcasting their positions to the Growlers. From a range of approximately 70 nautical miles, the Growlers unleashed their HARM missiles. They then peeled away just in time to witness the destruction of their targets, effectively neutralizing all air defenses in the region. Just when the Houthis might have believed the attacks were complete, the Navy prepared for a 4th wave. Moving silently beneath the waves was a USLO SANGELES class attack submarine. While these submarines are primarily designed to engage enemy ships, they have also been modified to launch Tomahawk missiles, either through their torpedo tubes or 12 vertical launch cells. With American commanders gaining a clearer picture of the devastation in the daylight, they opted to deliver another blow to the Houthis by targeting their secondary command posts in Damar Governorate. At 0640, the submarine launched a salvo of over a dozen Tomahawks through its torpedo tubes, a rare demonstration of this capability. By 7:10, these Tomahawks, like those fired by the destroyers, had reduced 4 more command posts to rubble. But the Navy's involvement was far from over. Lurking off the coast of Yemen was the P-8 Poseidon. This aircraft, resembling a weaponized 737, is generally used for maritime surveillance, locating ships and submarines across vast distances. But today, it would deploy another of its rarely used weapons, the AGM-84 SLAMER Standoff Land Attack Missile Expanded Response. Unlike the JSOW, the Slammer can exceed the speed of sound and strike targets up to 270 kilometers away. Although capable of engaging both ground and sea targets, Poseidons rarely operate in a land attack role. Today was an exception. At approximately 0915, a lone P-8 flying in the Red Sea unleashed a salvo of Slammers. 15 minutes later, multiple radar sites covering Hijaz Governorate were reduced to debris by 0930. With Houthi air defenses virtually eliminated across the entire country, the path was now clear for the final act of the day's display of firepower. Since November, 6 B-52 Stratofortress bombers had been deployed to the Middle East for the first time since 2019. These iconic AR craft, based in Qatar, each possess a maximum payload of 70,000 pounds, enabling them to deliver up to 35 25 2,000-pound GPS-guided bombs, more than any other AR craft in US service. Despite its impressive strike capabilities, the B-52 is an older, slower AR craft, designed long before the advent of modern anti-air technology. This is why the AIR Force and Navy had to meticulously clear a path for their operation. At noon local time, the B-52s released their payloads, dropping 70 JASSMs onto Houthi barracks and weapon storage sites in Sana'a that had been spared in the earlier naval strikes. While such a mission might have been perilous under normal circumstances, in the wake of the earlier devastation, it became a relatively straightforward operation. As the B-52s returned to base, US commanders celebrated the success of the first day's operations. Over 40 targets had been destroyed without a single American loss. But the Houthis were far from defeated. As the crews aboard the ships of the Harry S. Truman Strike Group finished dinner, radars on the USS Stout and the USS Jason Dunham detected a flurry of incoming contacts, a clear indication that the Houthis were preparing to retaliate. The fight was far from over. This is Goba Military, and subscribe for more real-time battlefield breakdowns and tactical deep dives.